Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the audiobook series here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia, otherwise known as the Wandering Quill and the Wandering Scribe, and we will begin today's episode with the continuation of the Gathering series. Now, where we last left off, Aminus and Decimus have now just met two more humans, but they're not the humans that they were looking for. At least they don't think. One is a European knight and the other is a samurai. But what about Symbol and Tira? Where are they? Well, let's jump right in chapter 14. You don't talk much, do you? Symbol asked. Ever since he saved her, she's been asking Avalon constant questions, bombarding the poor hunter. The young girl's constant barrage made the hunter reconsider saving her. Avalon noticed that his medallion's runes grew dimmer as the pair went deeper into the woods. Something was wrong. Why have you stopped? She said under her breath. Apologies. It appears someone is following us, replied the guardian. That did not sit well with Avalon. If other forces were looking for the humans, it could spell doom for everyone. He had to find another alternative route. Is everything all right? Symbol wondered why they had stopped. Avalon looked back at her and gave her a reassuring grin, trying to hide his concern. The guardian told him the only alternate route was going through the nearby bog. He detested going through swamps, but even he had to realize it was the only way to avoid further tracking. After finishing his conversation, he told Symbol they would take a different route. Taking his word, the pair changed directions and went towards the bog. As they got closer to their murky destination, Symbol gagged at the foul smell. It reeked of boiled flesh and excrement. Where are you taking us? Before she got her answer, she was hit with another wave of foul stenches. They had arrived at their destination. Arriving at the bog, Avalon noticed a dense fog had blanketed the marsh's surface, increasing the chances of getting lost. Wanting to avoid that possibility, the hunter grabbed a thick pair of vines from a nearby tree. Tying it around him like a bell, he tossed the other end to Symbol. We must go through here. It will cover our tracks. Symbol shook her head no. There is no way I'm walking through that swamp. It's full of muck and other things. Avalon's patience was running low. Grabbing the other end, he tied the remaining half around her and dragged them both into the murky water. She squealed in disgust as she was soon covered in black mud. Avalon ignored her and continued onward. Avalon went through the swamp and believed he and the human had escaped their tracker. Yet both were unaware that they had already been found. High up in the trees, overlooking the bog, a hooded figure decorated in tattoos watched them. Since meeting at the forest borders, he followed them at a distance. He had posed no threat to them yet. Instead, he was looking for something, or rather, someone else, in the bog. The hooded figure crawled down the tree quietly. As he entered the waters with a smooth transition, no sound was made. He was a very unusual character. He heard the human and the hunter in the distance and was about to approach them. He bumped into something big, half submerged in the murky water. Startled, he placed his hand on the object. He then noticed the thing had a rough leather texture, but was covered in a metal robe. Grabbing a handful of the metal shirt, he pulled at it and found it surprisingly heavy. Tugging at it increasingly, the object gave way and revealed itself as a body. Taken aback, he tossed the body off him, but a dangling hand grabbed his cloak. The grip was not deadly, but it did have some force. As he tried to pry it off, he heard a faint voice coming from it. "Help me," said the body. The hooded figure was surprised by this. The person was alive. Barely, though. Placing his hands under water, he lifted the almost dead soul out of the dark grave and carried the body to the other side of the bog. Though heavy with mail and letter, the unknown figure ensured not to drop the individual. Upon reaching the other side, the stranger grabbed a rag from his pouch and wiped the mud off the body's face. Clearing the dirt away, he saw that the body he rescued belonged to a woman covered in cuts and bruises and had her hair braided. He touched her neck with his index and ring finger and felt a slight pulse. With a relief, the stranger gently moved and laid her against a nearby tree. Seeing her face move slightly, he knew she would awake soon. Knowing she would have questions, he waited beside her, keeping her company and protecting her. "Some guide you are, getting us lost in a swamp with a fog." As she finished her rant, Avalon let out a heavy sigh. He could not stand listening to her anymore. Why he had to find this particular human, he would never know. Luckily for them, they arrived at the other end of the bog. "Finally," he said to himself, cutting the vine rope around them. He could now have some peace and quiet, at least for a while. As Symbol cleaned the mud off her clothes, he saw two figures leaning against a tree. "Avalon, it seems we have company," she said, tapping him on the shoulder. Another turned and saw one human and a hooded stranger casually leaning against a tree. Reaching for his blades, he stopped as an arrow whistled past his head, just missing him by a few inches. He saw the stranger had already notched another notched another arrow in his bow. The stranger drew back on the drawstring, that is, readied for a fight. A low moan was heard before either one had a chance to react. Turning their heads around, they saw the weary human slowly waking up from her perilous encounter. Blinking a few times, she tried to recount what had happened. The last thing she remembered was seeing a blue light envelop her in the water as she fell. Rubbing her head, she looked up at the three figures standing above her. "Am I in Valhalla?" she said quietly. Symbol stared at the older female. She resembled a Briton, or any other Celt from Boudica's army, but her accent and armor were different. Nothing she had ever seen. They weren't even Roman. "No, you're not in Valhalla. You're in hell." She offered her hand to the puzzled warrior. Pulling herself up, she rubbed her head, still aching from the blow. "What's your name?" Symbol asked. Before answering, the warrior maiden took a few minutes to realize where she was. My name is Tira Dragon Eyes." Symbol smiled. It was a beautiful name and a good one. Tira explained that she was a shield maiden, a Viking female warrior. "I'm Symbol, and this is Avalon." The hunter smiled under his mask. "Thanks for saving me." Symbol and Avalon raised their hands and told Tira that they did not save her. Rather, the stranger did. Turning around, she looked at the hooded savior. Wanting to thank him, she asked for his name. The stranger removed his cloak and laid it on the ground. Around his waist was an iron knife and a small hatchet, called a tomahawk. He was as tall as the hunter, with dark brown eyes and black hair trimmed short. On his neck was a stone necklace in the shape of a wolf. His skin was dark brown, almost resembling red clay. His outfit was made from bearskin, eagle feathers, and wolf pelts. "My name is Kanatakonha of the Mohawk." None of them could pronounce his name. "Just call me Sparrow." "Thank you, Sparrow, for getting me out of the swamp," said Tira, brushing off the slime and gunk that covered her armor. Symbol then explained to the Viking that she also saw a bright light. Sparrow heard a sound of a messenger bird as the two women talked to each other. He looked above and whistled for it. Soon a falcon appeared and perched itself on Sparrow's arm. He knew whose falcon this was. Removing the note from its leg, he opened it and began to read the message. Two more had arrived, a Roman and a Spartan. Soldiers knew more had come, so they sent a patrol to the woods. "We are following close behind. Find the others soon." Sparrow crumpled the note in his hand, giving a piece of meat to the hungry bird. He slipped a wolf's fang around the bird's neck. Sparrow whispered something into the bird's ear and sent it flying up into the air, back to its master. He turned back to the others, who were still discussing amongst themselves. "We'll camp here tonight, then we go east." They looked at him, puzzled, especially Avalon. "Why the hell do we go east? That's enemy territory." Avalon had a right to protest. While the warlords controlled most of the area, Lord Kairos solely managed the east. It had access to all the routes to the other realms, and was the center point of his fortress. In the east is a small village. The people there have the answers you seek. As the Mohawk went to his perch high in the trees, Tira asked him one final question. "Do you think they can send us home?" Sparrow said nothing to that. Ever since he arrived in this foreign land, he's been asking that same question for the last 5 years. Chapter 15. "Why is this happening to me?" said Lord Kairos. After his generals left, he returned to his meditation room, where he found deep internal conflict. He often went to his room to find inner peace, but this time he only felt conflict and rage. Grasping the crescent scepter, he instead concentrated on finding the stone himself. Kneeling peacefully in his dimly lit room, Kairos emptied his mind and transported his consciousness inward. He used his time manipulation power to reflect on when he last had the stone. As the mystical ruler reflected inward, he felt a disturbance. One far older and more dangerous than him. He opened his eyes and looked around in the room, but it was only him. Then he felt the presence again, right behind him. Tightening his grip on the staff, he turned around and swung the magical weapon, hoping to hit the intruder. Shockingly, he had nothing but emptiness. "You are perceptive," said a voice. The bewildered ruler looked around in his chamber, but found no one still. Then the voice spoke again. "You are losing your hold, my lord." Kairos began to concentrate on the identity of the unknown speaker. After listening, a cloaked projection appeared before him. To his surprise, or rather disgust, it was a familiar face, or rather a familiar presence. It was the first Lord of Time, a being who existed eons before Kairos was but a name. "Still alive, I see. I thought your kind went extinct a millennia ago." The projection laughed at Kairos' comment. As he lowered his scepter, he asked why he had come, and the projection explained his reasons. "My spies tell me you have lost the stone of the crony, and here I thought you were a worthy successor." Kairos glared at the projection, but it didn't faze him. "Don't be so confident, Serpent. My generals will find the stone soon, and with it back in my possession, the crony will cease to exist. I promise you that." The projection appeared unimpressed by Kairos' solution, but it was what he had expected from a false ruler. Thus he offered his solution to Kairos. "I hope you deal with this soon, or else my army will miss the fun." This caused Kairos' attention. Did he say army? "Yes, my friend, that is correct. My armies are now en route to your world as we speak. They'll be here soon." Anger burned in Kairos' eyes. How dare this serpent bring his armies to his domain? "We had a deal!" His shout echoed throughout the chamber room. The projection remained calm, but his tone had turned dark. "Did you honestly think I would allow you to rule my world? Your years of incompetence and countless past failures prove that you are unfit to rule. Your spirit may be immortal, but your body is human. Soon it will fade, and with it your host. And we both know you will fade into oblivion without a physical form." Kairos felt his anger reach new heights. He did his best to quench his fury. "I will retrieve the stone, and once I have my powers again, I will decimate your armies. You will lose everything, just like you did before." This last statement jabbed at the projection. The image vanished with a low growl, leaving Kairos in his chamber alone again. Concerned over the troubling news, he ordered a foot soldier inside. Pushing the marble doors open, the foot soldier bowed before his ruler. "Any word on the location of the stone?" He hoped for pleasant news. Any more surprises would be devastating for the soldier, that is. The soldier rose and reported his findings. "My lord, our spies have located the new arrivals. They plan to head east to the village." "The village? Yes, my lord. It seems the stone is there, right underneath our noses." Hearing this brought a smile to his face. He gave the soldier new orders to send out a patrol to the village and recover the stone. When asking about the villagers, Kairos told him to set the entire settlement ablaze, and the inhabitants put to the sword. "Leave no survivors." Lord Kairos sat on his throne in the war room as the soldier left with the order. He rubbed his weary brow and let out a deep sigh of frustration. Chapter 16. After a night in the bog, the four travelers continued their journey eastward. They marched through running rivers and traversed over fallen timber, yet pushed on. Sparrow was at the head of the party while Avalon covered their rear. With both men in charge of protection, the two females had time to connect and learn about their respective cultures. It turned out that the Celt and the Viking had similar interests. While the two ladies talked amongst themselves, Avalon ensured that they were not followed. They moved further into Kairos' realm with every step they took. The last thing they wanted, or rather needed, was an ambush. Guardian, what can you tell me about Sparrow? Whispered Avalon. Young Hunter is a human from a previous summoning. Previous? There are more. Yes, young Hunter. Long before you were born, there were many. Only 3 from his time, but I cannot trace their location. That means they could be dead, said Avalon. Perhaps, said the stone. Or they remain hidden. It is unclear. While everyone focused on the other things, Sparrow stopped in his tracks. This distracted the girls from their conversation and Avalon from his thoughts. What's going on? Asked Teoda. Sparrow said that they were now entering the Badlands. Before them was an ocean of flowing prairie grass and roaming hills. Where do we go next? Sparrow explained that a nearby village was only a few days away. There they would get their answers. Just then Avalon picked up a faint sound. He was the only one who could hear it. As he focused in, the sound became more clear. He was then able to pick up the distinctions. The sounds only he could make out. And this sound was very clear. The sound of foot soldiers marching. The village is in trouble. A large patrol is heading towards them. Everyone looked at the hunter in bewilderment. How could he hear from this distance? Are you positive? Asked Sparrow. The hunter nodded his head. Without hesitation, the Mohawk started running toward the village. Avalon, Tierra, and Simple ran after him, not wanting to be left behind. Coincidentally, on the opposite side of the prairie, Richard, Maury, Desmond, and Amonis were also heading in the same direction. It was now a race to see who would get to the village first before the patrol. The village everyone was heading towards was at the heart of the Badlands, and was merely a large settlement inhabited by the land's indigenous people, the Kronos, or the Kronai, depending on who was asking. Though they appeared human, and shared similar features, such as tan skin and a familiar build, they shared vast differences. Some of those differences were their magic usage, distinct crescent tattoos, and silver eyes. In the beginning there were many. Now they were the last village that had survived the many purges issued by Lord Kairos. The village was a small fort encompassed by 30-foot-high wooden walls and 2 wooden sentry towers. One of the sentries looked at one tower and saw a dust cloud approaching the village. To his dismay, it was the patrol. The sentry rang the alarm, warning those inside that danger was coming. The villagers got their belongings and rushed back into their homes to hide. In minutes, the soldiers entered the village and walked toward the elder's chamber. They gathered up the leaders of the Kronos and took them to the village square. An enemy captain shouted at the top of his lungs, his voice vibrating off the home's walls. All right, this is your last chance. Surrender, or your elders die. One soldier pressed his sword tip up the elder's neck. Minutes passed, and still no one had answered the call. Chuckling, the captain grabbed one of the elders and dragged him across the floor. He pinned him to the ground and raised his sword to kill him. First he dies, then you will all die. As he was about to strike the elder, the sound of a spear thrown in the air landed only a few inches from the captain's feet. Taken aback, he looked at the village entrance and saw 2 lone figures slowly approaching. Let them go, said one of them. Soldiers rushed to the side of their captain, who was slightly angry. Who dares interferes? Shouted the enemy captain. As the figures got closer, one soldier made them out. The captain's eyes widened, and he saw 2 earthlings, 2 champions of Earth, approach him. As the dust settled around them, all went quiet. No sound was said or heard. Just then the captain broke the silence and began laughing. Well, look who we have here. Earthlings, the saviors of this world. Looks like we're in for it now, boys. All the soldiers laughed in unison as they felt they had the upper hand, since they had the numbers, and the champions were only 2. Leave this place or die, Amina said, gripping his sword tightly. Desmond already unsheathed his and was ready for a fight. You're crazy, my friends. You're alone and outnumbered. There's no chance. Like the Greeks, the captain soon ordered his men to form a shield wall. They may be outnumbered, but they're not alone, said another voice to the captain's left. Turning his head, he saw Sparrow, Symbol, Tira, and Avalon, who had just arrived, laughing again. The captain taunted the newcomers. I don't think 4 earthlings and a Wendigo would make a difference. Here, then how about lucky 7? Said another voice. Turning to his right, the captain saw Maury and Richard, armed to the teeth. He realized now he was surrounded. Eyes burning with anger, he roared to charge, and soon the groups were divided into thirds to fight the earthlings. All 8 warriors prepared for battle, and those inside their homes heard the sounds of fighting. Many closed their eyes and tried to block out the noise, while others locked themselves in cellar doors and cellar floors with their families. Everyone waited to see who would win. Chapter 17. As the soldiers engaged the 8 warriors, the captain grabbed one of the elders and placed a sword against the old man's neck. All around him, he saw his men fight the champions, trying to keep them out. In front of them, the Spartan and Roman made a small shield wall and advanced, bashing, hacking, and slicing their way to the center. Sparrow and Avalon chopped down their enemies to his left, while Symbol and Tira rushed head-on to the massive group of his men. He saw the Viking throw his men around and break their bodies like old wood pieces. To his right, the knight and samurai used their crossbows and muskets to kill the soldiers before they got close. It was a bloodbath. Soon, they would surround him. Panicking, he attempted to slit the old man's throat, only to have an arrow lodged in his back. The shot came from Richard. As the captain fell, he realized all his men were dead, save him. Trying to crawl, he got his leg pinned to the ground by Maury's spear. He scrambled to escape, but all he could do was watch Sparrow approach and knelt to his face. The Mohawk saw the sheer terror and fear in the man's eyes. Sparrow removed the captain's helmet and placed a steel knife over his head. Grabbing a fistful of hair, he scalped the enemy soldier in one swift motion. Blood gushed, oozed, and poured from the man's head as the captain screamed, cried in agony. Ripping the pieces of flesh off him, Sparrow walked away and left him to die. Afterwards, Sparrow reunited with his old friends, Richard and Maury, while Amyntas and Decimus helped the elders to their feet. A little while later, the residents left their homes and saw the enemy soldiers dead and the earthlings alive. Soon all the villagers rushed to their heroes and fell to their knees, praising them. The Celt, Roman, Spartan, and Viking were confused at this gesture, and the villagers soon stopped upon the command of one of their leaders. "Thank you for saving us," said one of the elders. The villagers then gathered the enemy soldiers and disposed of them outside the gates. Decimus bowed to the elders, as did the others. "You are welcome, my lords, but we do not know why these men want to kill your people." Avalon stepped in. "Lord Kairos sent them to find the stone and kill everyone here if they refused." Amyntas gave the foreigner a puzzled look. "How do you know this?" He explained that his sonic hearing could pick up the patrol as they entered the Badlands. One of the elders gestured to the saviors to enter the temple. As they entered, they were amazed by what they had saw. All around them were white marble walls decorated with past champions' armor and weapons. Egyptians, Aztecs, Mongols, Turks, Persians, Rus, Parthians, Zulus, Teutonic Knights, Templars, Hospitallers, Anglo-Saxons, Germans, Mughals. The list goes on. The 4 newcomers could not believe what they were seeing. Then, the earthlings, accompanied by Avalon, were told to come to the temple's head. As they approached some small steps and sat at the very top, Sparrow and his friends sat with the elders and the rest of the people. "You all have many questions, and I pretty much know what the first one is. That is, why are you here?" "How did you know that?" asked Symbol. "As you can see, you're not the first of your kind we have encountered before," said one of the elders. Avalon looked at this holy place. He clutched his medallion and waited eagerly to learn more from the elders. "The first question I imagine you want answered is... The first question you want is, who is Lord Kairos and why does he want the stone so much? Did the stone summon us?" said Amyntas. One of the elders chuckled and cleared his throat before replying. My, you are an impatient young man. Your questions will be answered in all due time, but before you learn about Kairos, you need to learn the truth. You all need to know the story of an American professor named Archibald Hamilton, who came to our lands centuries ago. And with that, we will stop here. Now all the humans have met. They are all here. The 7 have emerged. And also the emergence of a new threat. as we just read, Kairos has some other plans for the people, or rather, someone else has other plans for this place. So, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, stay up to date, and thank you all for your support, and I will see you all in the next episode.